Hi folks, and welcome to the notes for Modelers Week 7, 2025-2026. This week we've moved on to create a little spaceship asset for our scene with the space station and planet that we've already been working on previous weeks. And I wanted this ship to look very different to the space station, so a very different kind of texturally, kind of simple design. It's going to be very small within our final scene anyway. But could just a very sort of basic freighter-like design. So to do that, we were going to explore a couple of techniques that we haven't seen before. So the first one of those is using a mirror modifier, which means we can mirror one half of the model and then have the other half just automatically follow the edits that we've done previously. Using a subdivision surface to smooth and round out our model, and how to control the sharpness of edges when we are using a subdivision surface, and finally how to do some texture painting as well, and how to create a custom line brush for drawing straight lines, and possibly also creating a custom grunge brush for just adding a little bit of kind of interest to our final texture. So let's start. We're going to take the default cube and we're going to select it. I'm going to call it Freighter. And we're going to go into edit mode. And the first thing I'm going to do immediately is I'm going to use Control-R to put a loop cut across there in line with the y-axis. Sorry, let me make sure my screencast keys are on. And now that I've got this cut across the middle, I'm going to go to face select mode here. I'm going to select that face, I'm going to go X, and I'm going to choose vertices to delete it. So now we've just got a half box. And with that half box now we can add, here at the modifier panel, we can add our mirror modifier there. And provided you split it along the y-axis as I did, then this mirroring it across X will give you the box back. If you happen to split it across the X-axis, you want to change that from X to Y. But the way I've split it here, you want to mirror across the X-axis that direction, which is what this is set up to do by default. So there's our little cube back again, but now we can just work on this side and have the other side follow along. We're also going to hit this clipping option. That means if any vertices, if I try and move vertex here, let me just show you. If I move one, hit G to move that, I can move it towards the middle line, but I can't move it across the middle line. Maybe it's easier to show with one of these. G, so I can move it to the middle but not through, and not across the far side. It saves us some trouble. Okay, so that's it. So I'm going to just select everything with A, and I'm going to scale it along the y-axis just to give us a bit of length like that. I'm going to aim for a freighter that sort of has a heavy kind of cargo area kind of hanging down beneath it, and an obvious kind of cockpit area here below at the front, and then perhaps some engines here at the side as well. So again, because this is a spaceship, you could really use your own imagination to develop this how you want, but I'm just going to keep this into a fairly simple design. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a split here for our sort of cockpit area at the front. So I'm going to do a Control-R there. I'm going to bring that forward here, and I'm going to select the bottom section here, select that face, and I'm going to go G and Z to move it down, and Z, no sorry I'm not, I'm going to extrude it, forgive me. I'm going to go E and Z to extrude it down a bit, Z, making sure that the blue line is showing, and perhaps just move it down a little bit more, and then I'm going to expand this section out, E again to expand that out like that, and then I'm probably going to grab this here and I'm going to go G and Z just to move it down a bit, sorry, G and Z, just to give it a kind of a bit of a more interesting shape like that. So that's our kind of cargo area at the bottom. Here at the, I'm going to put another control loop here with Control-R and move it to there, and I'm going to just perhaps select these two faces, again face select mode, select those two faces, and I'm just going to extrude those a little bit as well. then I'm going to extrude these two as well, just to start giving a bit of shape to the cockpit area. Now we've got sort of a lot of the basic shape in place, but we'd like to put some engines in. So I'm going to do another Control R here and bring it back towards this. So this is approximately square. I'm going to select that face and inset it, and then I'm going to extrude it out, so that we've got kind of a pod for the engine to sit off of. I'm going to extrude again, just the tiniest amount, and scale it, just to widen that out, and again extrude it across. This is our kind of engine, and I'd like this face, this one, to go back a bit further, so I'm going to go E there, and just move that back a bit. I'm happy enough with that. I think that looks quite good for engines. Then it's just a matter of kind of tweaking. Now that you've got the basic shapes in place, you can do some tweaking to sort of maybe make it a little bit more interesting. I think, for example, taking this face to the front here and moving it in Y, it's going to pull that front out. It's going to immediately give that a more interesting profile. This now looks more like kind of windows at the front. But this node here, this vertex here, that doesn't look great being so far forward. So I'm going to go GY and just slide that back a bit as well. And that's a better shape there. This area at the back here, I'm just going to select these three vertices with shift. That might look good if I brought it forward a little bit. That shape looks quite nice. Again, I think this line here, again I'm going to do this in edge select mode. If I brought that forward a little bit, I think that slope there is going to give a little bit of interest to the back. And I'd probably like this to be deeper, so what I'm going to do is just go into a side view. I'm going to go to X-ray mode with this button, and I'm going to go to vertex select mode, and then I'm going to just drag a box, making sure this tool up here is selected, and I'm going to go G and Z just to move all that down a little bit, just to move that area up. It's very easy to, when you're in vertex select mode with the X-ray on, it's very easy, to make big changes, just to do G there and to move, say, the whole section, so GY, just to make the whole thing longer if that's what you wanted to do, if you weren't happy with the proportions, or whatever sort of change you want. But I'm reasonably happy with that, I think. I might just, yeah, no, I'm happy with that, I think. Okay. So I'm just going to come out of X-ray mode and have a look at that now in object mode. So it looks good, but it looks quite blocky. It might be nice to smooth it out a little bit and make it look like a more natural shape, less low polygon. So how might we do that? We'll come over to the modifier panel again and add another modifier. This time, again under generate, this one's called a subdivision surface. Make sure Catmull Clark is selected and just increase the levels from 1 to 2 for the viewport. And you can see now it's smoothed the shape out a lot. But it still looks very faceted, by which I mean you can see each individual face. Each individual face is still being treated as flat. They're not being treated as kind of smoothed. So we can, for the object, when we're in object mode, we can just right click on the object and say shade smooth. And now it's going to smooth that out and treat it as a shade as a smooth surface. So that overall doesn't, kind of looks much less low poly, but what it has done is it's smoothed out a few things that we wouldn't probably like to have smoothed out. We would like to keep some of those edges sharp. So I'm going to go back into edit mode with tab, and I'm going to show you how you can sort of sharpen up those edges again if you want to. Now one edge that we might like to sharpen up particularly is this cargo area here that's looking very blocky or looking very rounded out. So I would just select, holding down shift, select a few of these edges around the side. This is the first method we're going to show. Just select those ones. I'm not going to have to select these ones in the middle, or these ones where the left and rights join, and I'm not going to select that one again because that's really part of the back of the ship. So just the ones that kind of go around this cargo area on its own. And I'm going to open this side panel here again with N, or you click on that little dot there, or hit the N key, we'll pop that out, and just go to item. down here you'll get the mean crease, and the higher this crease level is, the squarer those edges will be, the less rounded out. So that's one way to do it, setting the crease value. But there's another method which I personally prefer to use, and that's by putting in additional loops here to indicate where you want it. See that if we look at the side here, you'll notice because you've got a loop here and a loop here and a loop here. These two are much closer, and you can see that this is not rounded as quite as much. It's not as big a difference, whereas these two are further apart, and it's really sort of smooth, over a much longer distance. So basically, by having the edge loops closer together, you can get a sharper edge. Still rounded, but more closer to the original square. So if I am just looking from the side here again, and I do a Control-R across here and move that edge forward, you can see the effect that it's having. If I move it to nearly there, that's much more flattening the front of that, like in the way I would like it to. Similarly, if I do a Control-R back here again, but notice this is also flattening the back here, so this is one limitation, this method, that the other doesn't have, but I still prefer this one overall. If you wanted this not to be quite so sharp back here, you could select just those edges and you could slide them back. To slide edges, you just select them, hit GG, and they will slide along the edges that they're connected to. So you can soften that up again if you want to on its own, but I actually don't mind how it looks, but you might want to have something a bit different. So you can still have control just by sliding those edges around. Again, this engine, while I like the fact it's kind of circular that way, again the ends look too rounded to me, too soft, so I'm going to go Control-R and just bring that like that, and again over here Control-R and just bring that like that. And now I'm much more happy with the shape that I've got there. That looks good to me, and I'm reasonably happy with the front of the ship there. I might just try and do one across here just to sort of see what I think. There's sort of a neck here. I'm not sure if I like it or don't like it. I think I like it. And the other thing is I might want to sharpen the top of the cargo container here, so I'm just going to maybe do another one and bring it up like that. I think I'm quite happy with that now. That doesn't look too bad at all. Maybe just review it and have another look. One more place might be here where this support joins the engine. So I'll go back in and do a Control-R there. Just tighten those a little bit, maybe a second one back there. So we still get a rounded element to it, but again now it's not as blobby looking as it was. Yeah, quite happy with that. Okay, so that's our little kind of ship model finished. It's going to be very small in our final render anyway, so we don't want to probably put too much detail into it. It's just going to be entering the large space station at the end, so we're going to see it from probably something like that sort of scale, potentially, maybe not much, certainly maybe no bigger than that. So we just want it to look a little interesting, but not not super detailed. But we'd like to, since this is going to be a smooth model and it doesn't have all that interesting surface detail that the original one did, that the space station does, it'd be nice to use a bit of color on this to just kind of give it a little bit of interest. So how can we do that? Let's just make sure it's selected, and we'll go to the shading workspace, and we've got a material already on this object. It's called material, so I'm just going to double click on that and rename it to freighter as well. Freighter. And at the moment the color is just being controlled by this one base color, which is white, but we can feed an image texture in here instead. So we're going to add texture of type image texture, and we're going to feed color into color, and we're going to hit new here, and we're going to call it freighter albedo. Albedo just means the color values, the colors of things, and we're keeping the name freighter in there to associate it with the freighter. We don't need alpha is the transparency, we don't need that, so we're going to leave that off. And this is 1000 by 1000 pixels, 1K by 1K, 1024 by 1024 pixels. So that's fine. It's low for certain assets, but for something as small as this is going to be 1K texture is fine. So we'll hit new. So that's now a texture onto which we could place color. It's currently all black, but we can start putting color onto this by painting onto that texture, which we can do in Blender. If we go over to the texture paint workspace and just have a quick look, this is our texture here, our black square texture that we just created, and these white lines on it are our UV map for the freighter that we've created, and at the moment they're a bit muddled looking, kind of all up on top of each other. So really what we want to do is UV unwrap this model again, and that's easy to do. Let's go to the UV editing workspace. Here on the left hand side here we've got the edit mode already selected, hopefully. So we want to select everything in our model by hitting A, and then we're going to UV unwrap it again. So let's go UV unwrap Smart UV project. And because we're hand painting here, I'm going to set an island margin. I think I found 0.04 was good. That's going to keep the little islands, you'll see what I mean by islands in a moment, slightly apart, so that the colors when we paint don't bleed from one part of the model into the other. Then you hit create, and you can see now that it's created all of these areas in the texture, reserved them for various parts of the model. It's kind of automatically split it up into these islands. So that's great. You can also control sometimes where the model splits if you want to by putting in explicit seams. We haven't had to do that here, so I'm not going to explain it at the moment. But yeah, that's what we've got. Right, so now that we've got a reasonable UV, we can go back to texture painting and let's have a look at some of the controls that we've got here. There are really only two that we're going to look at. One is the paint brush, and these are the colors for the paintbrush, so black and white, foreground and background. If you've got you've got the two colors here. If you just left click, it's going to paint with this brush, paint the foreground color. If you hold Control as you left click, it's going to paint the background color. So you can paint directly onto the model, or you can paint directly onto the texture. Both work just fine. I'm just going to do that for a moment. I'll show you how to paint with a little bit more control in a few minutes. But first of all, we'll just look at the fill tool as well. So the fill tool is there. So, pardon me. The first thing I'd like to do is maybe set a color overall on this model. I've got a white. I think that might do. So I'm going to hold down the Control and left click, and that's just going to flood that white color all over the model. And that's a good start. Okay. So how do we now start to paint in some different colors on detailed parts of the model? If we were to try and paint, for example, the windows here at the front of the freighter, if you were to try and do that by hand, I'm just going to try that now with this black color. Oops, sorry, that's the flood fill. Go back to the brush. You can change the size of the brush by hitting F and then moving the mouse until you get the size you want, or you can change it here. That also changes the size of the brush. But by using F and moving it, you get a better idea what you're going to get. So I could, draw across like that, and it looks all right. It wasn't terrible. But one of the easier ways to do it, if you already have kind of faces in your model that correspond to where you want the color to be, if you switch here into edit mode, and then just select the faces that you want to paint on. So I'm just going to select these two faces, okay, for the kind of windscreen, and then switch back to texture paint again and select enable this paint mask button. We'll find now if I try and paint anywhere else, it's not going to. The only place it's going to allow me to paint is the place that we had selected in the edit. So I can just paint over there, and it's going to remain perfectly within that boundary. I could have also equally used the fill tool there, just the same. I'll just again do the fill tool, and that would have worked just as good. You can see on the model where the color has gone to. Notice as well, because we've mirrored this model, there's only the UV map is just for one side, and so it's just replicated on the other side. So anything we paint on this side, on the left hand side, is going to be replicated on the right hand side. So that's just the way we've set it up. It doesn't have to be like that, but that's the way we've created the model. So that's the way it's going to be. I'm going to switch to the edit mode again, and I'm going to look in a side view. I'm going to go temporarily to, remember you can roll the scroll wheel to slide these menus over. I'm going to go to X-ray mode, and I want to just box select the bottom, that kind of cargo area at the bottom, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just checking the selection, but that looks like what I want it to be. So I'm going to just switch X-ray off and go back to texture paint mode, and now I can select something contrasting for that. So maybe kind of a nice industrial orange or something, and I'm going to paint, just flood fill that and just paint that whole area there. And similarly, it might be nice to put the same color perhaps on the engines. So I'm going to go back to edit mode, and I'm going to select the engines. So I'm just going to get an angle where nothing else, I can select over, box select over the engines and nothing else. So again, I'm going to go to X-ray mode and then just box select, drag a box just for the engines. Perhaps don't want that. So if I hold down Control with my box, I can unselect those extra bits. Yeah, Control while you select a box, Control while you drag a box will do a reverse selection. It will remove stuff. So just a normal box will add things, and Control and box will remove them. So I'm happy now that's boxed nicely over the bit I want. So again, I'm going to go back to texture paint mode, and I'm going to flood fill, and I'm going to fill that in on those engines. And again, I'm going to just switch off X-ray mode again. And I'm going to for a moment switch off the paint mask. Okay, that's not looking too bad at all. I'm quite happy with that. I'd like maybe to put another little bit of detail in. I thought putting a coloured stripe down the side of the ship would be good, would look good. So how do you do that? Well, the easiest way to draw a straight, it's very hard to draw a straight line with the brush, because it's very hard not to wobble a little bit as you draw along. But you can create a brush which effectively draws a straight line. So here on this side, you'll notice that when you have the brush selected, this tool panel shows the current brush asset, and we have a load of different brushes set up within by default. So these different brushes do different things. Paint hard is the default one. This one is paint hard with pressure, which is if you've got a graphics tablet. Paint soft and so on. So they just have different effects, and you can experiment with some of those if you want to. But what we can do is we can take an existing brush and create a new brush from it. So I'm just going to take this brush, this paint hard brush, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to call it paint line. And I'm going to hit save. And then we're going to come down here, and I'm going to change the stroke, I think, from space to line. Yeah. Now this works quite differently than how it used to. So if I pick a different color, one that I think will look nice maybe alongside the orange, perhaps that blue would look good. Yeah, I'm going to go for that blue. If you click and drag, you'll see it drags a straight line, and only when you release it does it actually draw the line. Now that did, what did I do? I don't know. Only that didn't work so great. So because my brush was too thick, but texture paint mode. So I just need to reduce my brush size. F. And I'm maybe just going to go on a side view. And then just from the front, perhaps I can just close that little gap over. Not perfect, but yeah, it's not so bad. I'm going to go with that. Okay, and I lost the color on the engines. So let me fix that. Let's go back to paint mask, and I want to do a fill. So I'm just going to select the color from there and just fill it. There we go, that's better. Okay. Cool. Texture paint mode. Okay. Oh, no. No, that didn't look right. It didn't really get the colour I wanted. Texture paint. Yeah, this orange is not like the one I wanted. I guess what I'm going to have to do is go back into object mode. No, how am I going to do this? Actually, switch this off, because it's the, yeah, that's what's, make sure I'm in maybe that mode. Yeah, I'm just going to go to viewport shading, I think then, because the color should be fairly even, and now I'm going to use the eyedropper to pick that color that I want. That should be a lot closer, and then I'm going to use the, okay, put the mask back on, and then use that. Okay, wow. That was making that harder on myself than it needed to be. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with that little ship as it stands. I think, you know, it's got enough detail, not a lot, but enough. I might just use the line brush again, just to put a little line across the back here as well. Oops, sorry, wrong color. I need to pick up the blue color again. Yeah, it's gonna be okay. Alright, cool. So another thing that can give a bit of interest to a texture is to put a little bit of kind of dirt and wear on top of the texture. So we can create a new brush to do that as well, and that would be a sort of a grunge brush is what it's often called. Just a kind of a random texture that you paint very lightly onto things, just to give it the impression of kind of wear and dirt. It just makes things look more used and not maybe quite so shiny and white. So let's just duplicate this brush again. I might just switch to the paint hard brush first of all, and then duplicate that. So we're going to call this grunge. Save. And we want this to have, instead of just a solid color, which the other brush is, we want it to have kind of a texture to it. So we're going to come down to where it has texture, and we're going to hit new, and then we're going to pop down, change to this texture panel to set up that texture that we've just created above. So I'm going to change, there's lots of random textures in here that you can use. So I think that I might use maybe that distorted noise might not be bad. So I'm going to tweak the size until I don't want it too big, I don't want it too small. Something like that I think it's probably about the scale I want. And you can play with the colors here. You can do, for example, a color ramp if you want, just to, you know, sort of clip the colors a bit and create something that looks a bit more black and white. I actually quite like that effect, so I'm gonna use that, I think. So I'm gonna go back to the tool panel again. We should see our texture load in there, which we do. And I'm going to select the rake option as well. So what rake does is that depending on what direction I'm moving the mouse as I paint, it will sort of streak the texture in that direction. And I'm also going to increase the size here. What that will do is in X, what that will do maybe to 5. What that will do, or we don't see it here, but when I paint it on, let me just try and paint it on for a second at full strength. So what you're going to see is it's going to kind of do, you know, instead of, it's stretched out in that direction. You know, it's more like lines, whereas the, you know, instead of blobs, if I increase this even more, maybe 20, again, and just do that. Yeah, you can see that it's, you know, they're more linear. Okay, so it's more like streaks, which is kind of what I want for this ship that's been flying through space. So I'm going to change the color from that blue, and I'm probably going to just put it back to maybe just a black, but I'm going to turn the strength way down, very low indeed. And we want to try and use this subtly. So I'm going to try and just streak it across the bits of the ship, you know, which are kind of hitting that interstellar dust. Don't want to overdo it, you know, it's easy to maybe do too much, but control Z is your friend, and if you're not sure, go back a few steps, have another look. But yeah, you know, it just makes it look a little bit more realistic, right? Compared to what you had before. It's less of a toy and now a little bit more of a real thing. Maybe even there, just could do with a bit more. Yeah, it's hard to know where to, it's hard to know when to stop. Okay, yeah, but close to edges is good anyway. Near edges, it's going to look good generally. Okay, I'm happy enough with that. So that's kind of putting a bit of grungy look to the model, and just in the interest of making it just to look more like something that really, you know, really has a job in life. The final sort of brush that I might just quickly talk about as well is a stencil brush. So stencil brushes are for bringing in existing images and using them to kind of paint them on to an existing model. So again, much as I've done before, let's just take the grunge, well actually we'll go back to the default brush first of all, paint hard, and we'll just duplicate that again. And we'll call it just logo. Save. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to again do a new texture, but this time I'm going to open in the texture panel. I'm going to open the texture. So I'm just going to go to my desktop where I've got some CoderDojo things. And just maybe pick up the CoderDojo logo. Alright. So that's the CoderDojo logo that I've got as a PNG file, which is a transparent PNG, so the edges are transparent, which is good for this. And I'm going to set mapping to be stencil here. And when I go back over the painting window, you'll see something has happened. You'll see that this stencil pops up in place. So okay, so I'm going to move let's just put the ship on its side, and let's just zoom in a bit and just bring it. I'm going to put the logo maybe up here. So if you go down over the stencil and hold the right mouse button, you'll find the stencil moves with you. If you hold the shift button and the right mouse button together, you'll find the stencil scales in and out. And if you use the control button and the right mouse button, the stencil will rotate. So you can position the stencil where you want to. And once you've got it where you want it, then all you've got to do is paint. And that should paint the stencil in, except it didn't. Why did it not? Oh, sorry, I probably have to set the color to white. Set the color to white, there we go. Yeah, alright. And obviously you don't have to paint it at full strength. You can also set it up so that, you know, it could be slightly reduced, just to blend in with a little bit of what's there already. Might set on. So now we've got our kind of CoderDojo Athenry logo on our ship. It's a bit big, I think. I'm going to just zoom in a bit more before painting it on. But this is how you can paste any sort of image you have, you can paste it in. Now one thing about our ship, because again the textures are mirrored on the other side, it's going to look backwards on the opposite side. Again, that's just the way we've set up these textures, and it's fine because we're only ever going to be looking at this from one side. And really I only did this anyway. It's going to be so small we'll never see it, but I just wanted to show how you can paste a texture just in here using stencil painting. So again, for the stencil, once you've set up the brush and loaded your texture and set the mapping to stencil, right clicking on the stencil image will move it around, position it. Right click and shift will right shift and click will scale it, right shift and control will rotate it, and just put it where you need it to be, and then just paint normally with the left mouse button. That's stencil painting. Okay, I think that's all for today, so thank you for that. I'm going to upload these files as usual to the GitHub, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. We'll bring these together, we'll do some animation. It's going to be fun. Thanks, bye.